Hey, what's up, guy? It's Rohit Raju here, back with another Raju's Rants. And this time I'm going to be talking about Star Wars. Well, not this time, I've talked about it in the past, and I'll probably repeat some things that I've said before, but I'm talking about this because, once again, Star Wars is in a spot where it's getting maybe criticized, but the criticism is valid. They honestly deserve this because they have lost the writer, the second writer. This is the second writer they lost to the Rey movie, which was supposed to be the first movie when they made all those announcements at the last celebration. That was supposed to be the first movie being made, and they had Charmin Obaid-Chinoy, who I understand is activist style. She is an activist, and she's made a lot of documentaries that have won awards, but she's never made a movie. Why you would give someone that's untested your first big movie, that doesn't make any sense to me. But we'll kind of get into that. So they lost their writer, which has been now commonplace for current Lucasfilm. Now, I know you guys are probably thinking, well, that happens all the time. They lose writers, projects get canceled. But this has been a continuous thing at Lucasfilm. It's come to the point where more and more people are like, how is this happening? What's going on over there? Why does Kathleen Kennedy still have a job? And so on. And we'll touch base on my thoughts on all that stuff. But first, I'm going to run down everything that was announced, has been announced over the past few years, and canceled. So we'll start off. You have to remember, we'll talk about the last celebration. The Boba Fett movie, the Mandalorian movie wasn't even announced. It was supposed to be the first film, was supposed to be Daisy Ridley's film, and that was supposed to be going into production. They didn't even have a script yet they already announced it. And it was supposed to be originally done by Damon Lindelof, and his script was supposed to be about an older Rey, and Daisy Ridley wasn't going to be in it. The rumor was he wanted Helen Mirren, and then that got scrapped, and he got let go, or they parted ways, or whatever. And then they had Stephen Knight, the guy that does Peaky Blinders, which I hear is an excellent show, and apparently he turned in draft after draft after draft, like 4 of them, and they turned down each one and wanted all these changes, and he was just like, you know what, I'm good. So now that has been pushed back. James Mangold's movie is now apparently in production, which they didn't know when that was going to happen. And now Daisy Ridley has been like, it's great, things are great, yada, yada, yada. She's hinting at a trilogy, which we will talk about why that's a bad idea. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, I can't remember when it was. Was it last August? It was out of the blue, they announced a Mandalorian movie. But at the last celebration, Jon Favreau was like, oh yeah, the scripts for Mandalorian Season 4, they're already written. So it's just constant dodginess by Lucasfilm, and it's to the point where it's unacceptable. Now, I know some people are like, well, I don't care, I'm not into it that much. Well, a lot of people are, and I've been a fan of Star Wars ever since I was a little kid. I grew up on the original trilogy, absolutely loved it, and there's a reason why Star Wars, that flag was being waved for 40 plus years, and it has to do with the or the OT. And then the prequels came out, and that was very divisive among people, not because of the route they took, but the way the movies were made. They were, pretty bad. Objectively, they're not good movies. A lot of the acting, the dialogue, the delivery of dialogue, the way it looks, just really bad. And it wasn't that Star Wars standard. Now, I'd say people that are probably 35 and maybe 15, or maybe a little bit older, 35 or 20, they have a very special place in their heart for the prequels. So they have a huge love for the prequels, and that's why you've seen such a resurgence of love for the prequels. And that's cool, because Hayden Christensen, Ahmed Best, these guys didn't deserve a lot of the hate that they got. However, everyone always tries to blame the fans, but even Jake Lloyd's mother had come out and said that it wasn't the fans, it was the critics. And even Ahmed Best said, yeah, some of the fans were really rough, but it was also the critics. And you have to remember, the internet was not that huge back then, so you weren't getting a lot of that stuff. A lot of that hate wasn't I guess you could say, broadcasted like it is nowadays. So it was a totally different thing, but of course people always try to blame the fans, and Lucasfilm and mass media are anonymous for blaming the fans for failed projects. The Acolyte's perfect example of that. They blame the fans when they didn't even get the general audience. It wasn't the diehard fans that not only didn't like the show, you had your general audience of normies that did not tune in because the show was not good. So, but anyways, they announced, they never announced The Mandalorian. They didn't even say anything about season 4. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, besides Jon Favreau saying the scripts were written, and then all of a sudden, out of the blue, they announced Mandalorian movie. Well, now that's the first thing. And that apparently is done filming. So, which I worry about because it feels like they're just going to take the scripts of season 4 and just adapt it into a movie. And I don't, that might not be a good thing. However, I do think that movie will do well because that is the one project besides maybe Andor that united the fan base, The Mandalorian. Except season 3 really pushed a lot of people away, yours included. It was such a hodgepodge and a mess, and people were making excuses for it left and right. Wasn't a good season, and I think now that the smoke is cleared, you see more and more people saying that. But remember, now Boba Fett was originally a movie that was announced. That didn't happen. It was supposed to be Josh Trank, I think, was supposed to do it. And then Josh Trank did that bad Fantastic Four movie. And then he kind of spoke out against the studio about it. And then that was taken off the table. And then, of course, that became a series, which also really was subpar, and a lot of people didn't like that. When The Last Jedi, before it was even in theaters, Rian Johnson it was announced that he was going to get his own trilogy. And then when people actually watched The Last Jedi, it cut the fan base in half, and that was probably the worst. That was the moment, I think, in Star Wars history that really divided the fan base, and we're still divided over it. And then, that was a huge part of when they were attacking fans for not liking that. But I think that would be a bad idea. That hasn't been officially canceled, but it's definitely been shelved. You haven't heard anything about that. And the last thing you heard was Kathleen Kennedy saying, he's busy with Knives Out and all that stuff. And, we'll circle back later on. But I think it's a bad idea to even do that anytime soon if he does get it, because that sour taste is still in the mouth of many, and they will not support a trilogy by Rian Johnson. I think a trilogy by Rian Johnson, even though I hated The Last Jedi, I think it could be good as long as he doesn't touch any lore established stuff. Just let him do his own like Star Wars thing that's it's contained in its own bubble. Yeah, once you start doing stuff like you did with Luke Skywalker, you're going to lose half of your audience right there. Another thing was the guys from Game of Thrones, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss. That was announced that they were supposed to have a movie, and the big rumor is that was going to be an Old Republic. But then from the blowback of season 8 of Game of Thrones, that got pulled, that got shelved, and then they ended up doing stuff with Netflix. I think they did, Three Body Problem. So that ended up getting pulled. Another thing, Kevin Feige, he was supposed to have a movie that was announced not too long after Marvel was getting into its growing stages. I think it was kind of around the Endgame time. And then I remember Kathleen Kennedy denied that, but it's literally been on record of his publicist or somebody, or maybe even Kevin Feige himself, saying that, yes, he was in talks to do a Star Wars movie. And then Kathleen Kennedy was just like, it's just the fans, blah, blah, blah. It's like, she's either really out of touch or just completely clueless or just loves to spew bullshit. But yeah, I mean, there's there's evidence of, blatant evidence of him supposed to be getting his movie. And that probably won't happen because he has to fix the MCU. Taika Waititi, he was in talks of getting his own movie. And he even said that, hey, it's going to piss people off. I'm going to really destroy your mythos. Because that's what Star Wars needs. I'm sorry. But after, Love and Thunder? And some other duds that he put out, a lot of people weren't having that. And they didn't want Taika anywhere near Star Wars. Especially if he was going to destroy the mythos and the lore. I mean, you got to stop doing that stuff. It's not you're not helping the cause. And I think that would have been a very bad idea. Again, if he had kept it kind of like his own thing, it would have been good. But once you start touching established Star Wars stuff, nope, that's a bad idea. Because these type of people, they don't respect it. Patty Jenkins, Rogue Squadron. It was announced. They had a whole trailer for it, all this stuff. And then after Wonder Woman 84, that didn't happen. And then it got announced again that she was doing it. And then it got canceled again or shelved again or whatever. That's just kind of hot mess. Again, another thing that got announced and nothing. As far as we know, that is also shelved. Sean Levy's movie, that's probably still happening because it could be. I mean, I honestly wouldn't put it past them for that not to happen, but it seems like he was very excited about it when he talked about it. But of course, what's he going to say? Like, he doesn't want to work on it. But, he had a hit with Deadpool 3, and Lucasfilm has this weird, like, they like want to star fuck. It's just really, really weird. They want to get the hottest writers or the directors, and they end up trying to lock them in, and then they don't end up doing a project till God knows when. And yeah, it's like the same thing with James Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi or whatever it is. I don't trust Lucasfilm and James Mangold after the horrible Indiana Jones movie that bombed and that cost so much money. Again, I just think Lucasfilm was out of touch. They bombed with that. They bombed with tons of Star Wars stuff. They bombed with Willow. Willow was so bad they took it off Disney Plus. It's like, what are we doing? And again, so Sean Levy, he might be in the same boat. Maybe not. Maybe we'll see what happens. But his movie's also announced, and that could still happen. You have the Rey movie, like we just talked about earlier. Another writer left. Daisy Ridley is saying, yes, it's happening. I think it's a horrible idea. Now she's hinting at like a series or a trilogy. I think it's a horrible idea. Rey had her trilogy, and it was the only trilogy out of the three that had diminishing returns. I don't think it's a good idea to put such a character that was from a very divisive set of movies, at least now, this quickly, back into the theater, because you still have people like myself that want nothing to do with the sequel trilogy, and they're not going to support it, and they won't. And I think a lot of mainstream fans, too, didn't like the way Rise of Skywalker was, and a lot of them weren't fans of The Last Jedi. Excuse me. They weren't fans of The Last Jedi. And that sequel trilogy, after a long time, now that it's all said and done, it really doesn't have a lot of love. It has its supporters, but a lot of people just don't care for the sequel trilogy and really feel like Lucasfilm dropped the ball. I feel like they dropped the ball. Like they dropped the ball and nuked the field. That's what they did with that. Like I don't know how you mess up so badly, but yeah, that there's that. So I think trying to make this Rey film is a really bad idea, but it really seems like Kathleen Kennedy is hell-bent on having Rey be the face of Star Wars, but you're forcing something. It's not organic. And the first impression was already not even a bad one, it was a terrible one. No, you might salvage some people, but I think overall this movie won't do well. It might do okay, but it's not going to do as well as they want, because this isn't the movie that's going to bring the Star Wars fandom together. It's more divisive than anything, but it seems like KK is just hell-bent on pushing Rey, having this female be the face of Star Wars, and it's like, you're pushing your personal politics, and that's wrong. You're not out to make a good Star Wars story. You're trying to mold Star Wars, not even mold it, you're breaking it from what it is and trying to make it into something you want it to be. And I feel like that's a modern problem in Hollywood right now, because people are so driven by their political stance, which I can't stand politics, especially right now, this time of year. I think you have these people that instead of making a good Star Wars story, they think they know better than Star Wars, and they try to make it their story. Ryan Johnson was like that. Leslie Headland, and the people that did the Obi-Wan series. You just have these people that think they know better than what Star Wars is. Star Wars in science fiction and fantasy, it's an escape. But we'll get to that. So the Rey movie, will it get canceled? No, not a doubt. I don't think that would ever get canceled because Kathleen Kennedy wants that to be the bread and butter of Star Wars, even though she's never going to be accepted by the majority of the fan base just because of what the sequels were. It has nothing to do with Daisy Ridley. Daisy Ridley, in my eyes, had a really good charisma and presence when she was portraying Rey, but it's how her character was portrayed. She had no story arc. She was a straight line through the whole trilogy. She was just good for the sake of being good. And yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a bad move having Rey trying to push that as much as possible. That's just a very bad move. And then we talked about James Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi, another movie that was announced, and now apparently it's going to be next in line after the Mandalorian movie, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes. We'll see what he does. I don't have much faith in many Lucasfilm projects because you have the same people in charge. But, we'll get to that later on in the video as well. Dave Filoni, his Filoni-verse, that got announced, and he's supposed to have a movie to wrap up all that stuff, wrap up Mando, the Boba Fett, the Skeleton Crew, and Ahsoka. Supposed to wrap all that up with Thrawn. So we'll see what happens there. I know Ahsoka Season 1 didn't do great numbers, so it really depends on how Season 2 will do. I think Ahsoka Season 1 did well with the main Star Wars fans, but like normies, I don't think we're tuning into that. I think that may have been too many deep cuts for them and maybe just not appealing. I don't know, but people didn't tune in like they wanted them to, which is a bummer because I liked the majority of the show besides the last 2 episodes. But we'll see if that even happens. Who knows? I know that's scheduled for Filoni to happen. But we'll see what happens. Guillermo del Toro, he was supposed to have a Jabba the Hutt movie. Nothing happened with that at all. Another announcement, another announced project, another thing, poof, nothing happening with that. It's just weird how they constantly announce these things and nothing happened. Lando, the Lando movie, Donald Glover swears that it's still happening. They put all these things on the board at like Comic-Cons and celebrations. Nothing's happened. And then there was, of course, all the stuff with Solo. Those guys that did 21 Jump Street, I forgot their names. They also worked on the Spider-Verse stuff. I can't think of their names at the moment. But that got scrapped, They had to have Ron Howard come in. They got let go. The old creative differences thing. Colin Trevorrow's Episode 9, he had the whole script. The script got leaked. We saw what happened. It was supposed to be Duel of the Fates. And it was supposed to pick up where The Last Jedi left off, and it was going to give Luke way more love than that whole thing did. Rey was still going to be a nobody. Kylo was still going to be a villain. And yeah, it was the script at least seemed way better than what we got. Again, that got scrapped. And there's another project, too, by 2 other individuals, and I can't remember who they were. It was announced, or they are announced that they were going to do something, and it got scrapped. And it's really weird, man. It's a constant thing. Yes, this happens with big franchises and corporations and all that stuff, but for Lucasfilm, it's been a frequent occurrence. It's not even frequent occurrence. It's happening all the time. And so fans are like, why am I going to get excited for something if I don't even know if it's coming out? It might not even come out. It might get canceled. And who's to blame them? Who's to blame them? Who's to blame fans for thinking like, oh, they're just full of shit? Because as of late, the past few years, they have been. They haven't had a movie since 2000? It's going to be 6 or 7 years? 6 or 7 years since a movie came out. Back in the day, sure, that was good, but nowadays stuff is popping out. It's quick. It comes out really very fast. And they haven't had a movie come out in forever. They pump the brakes because the Rise of Skywalker was panned. You know, it almost didn't make $1 billion. And if you look at it, technically it didn't. It was like right at the cusp. But people are just done. They're honestly done. You still have those weird diehard fans that support this stuff and make up every excuse in the book and blame this side of the fandom and that side of the fandom. Those people are by far the worst. They're worse than they're so weird and pretentious and making up stuff and trying to act, oh, hey, this is really good. You see, people didn't understand it because it was really deep. No, it ain't that deep. It just wasn't good. They're trying to hop over all these hurdles with the Acolyte. Nah, it's just not that good. Same thing with the book sales. The High Republic book sales have been tanking because it's not that good. They have the wrong people in charge. It's weird, and they keep announcing these projects and they don't come out. And it's a shame because there's no accountability held. I don't know how people there still have their jobs. That kind of just really blows my mind. Blows my mind that Kathleen Kennedy still has a job. I don't understand that. And I don't know her personally. I don't dislike her, but I dislike what she's done to Star Wars. And I also can't stand what Lucasfilm has done to the fandom. The fandom is like politics. That's like left versus right. And it's so sad. You do have people that no matter what Star Wars does and puts out, that they crap on it. They're instantly hateful, and I'm sure at one point in time they loved Star Wars, but now they just want to see it to fail under this current regime. And then you have people that do nothing but praise Star Wars. And if you don't like it, you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're this, you're that, and you can't just not like it because it's not good. Everything to them, oh, this is the best Star Wars ever. It's so groundbreaking. It's better than... No, it's not. It's not. It captures that one sect of an audience, the weird, ultra-progressive people that have to have everything, representation, and all this stuff. Look, I've said this a million times before. It's supposed to be in a galaxy far, far away. When I watch Star Wars, I want to escape. I don't want to be reminded of Orange Man Bad or any other nonsense. So they did this thing recently, and I know the character's been around for a while, but the character is a clone, but it's trans, right? Which is, there's nothing wrong with having a trans character. I mean, you could do so much with, like, was it Zam Wessel? I could be saying that wrong. She's a bounty hunter in Attack of the Clones. She's a shapeshifter. You can do so many things with that, you know what I mean? But they put this character as a clone trooper, and a lot of people, and myself included, was like, well, that's really silly because the clone troopers were made for perfection, and even some that had different eye color got killed and wiped out because of Kaminoans. They don't play that, you know. This is supposed to be perfect product. And then you had the Bad Batch. If they put the trans person with the Bad Batch, I think it would kind of make more sense story-wise. And also, the armor that the trans person's wearing is a trans flag. Now, there's nothing wrong with that in general, right? There is something wrong with putting it in Star Wars. Why? Because that is a real world thing. It's like when Han Solo said hell, you know, I'll see you in hell. That took a lot of people out of the movie. They're like, wait a minute, so does hell exist in Star Wars? It's just weird. Because it takes you right out of the fantasy. It takes you right away from the galaxy that's supposed to be far, far away. And for whatever reason, you have these people that are just obsessed with modern politics, and instead of making a good Star Wars story, they have to use Star Wars as a vehicle, as a tool to write their story in a self-insert. You saw that with the press for the Acolyte. You see that anytime, like, Kathleen Kennedy's like, well, I want female this, I want female that. Star Wars is what they would consider a boy brand, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like Barbie is considered a girl brand. When done right, it can unite everybody. The Mandalorian did that. The sequels divided. The Mandalorian brought everyone together. It brought normies together. It brought hardcore fans together. It brought soccer moms in there. So it brought the mainstream audience and the diehards. Season 1 and 2 blew everybody away. Season 3, divided once again. Sequels, divided. But how you hype a project up, I know I see a lot of people that try to say, well, they don't, what are you talking about, narrative or agenda? They don't do that. All you gotta do is watch their PR. The PR for The Acolyte, that was a nightmare. Like, why would you say any of that stuff? Like, people want to escape, right? So you look at the original trilogy and even the sequel trilogy, it's timeless. It's timeless. Like the original Lord of the Rings, it's timeless. But if you look at stuff like The Acolyte, the sequel trilogy, and even like Rings of Power, and I know it's not Star Wars, but those are a product of its time, to where they insert all these modern day things because they feel like there has to be this, there has to be that. There doesn't have to be any of that. If you create a good, coherent story, movie, show, guess what? You have created a universal story. You have created a universal product. So everyone from all walks of life are going to relate to this. They're going to find a character to relate to, regardless of the color of their skin. So many people related to Luke Skywalker, not because he was a white kid, but because he was a dreamer. He was your everyday guy. So many people relate to Han Solo because he was that cool smuggler, ladies' man. You know, there's something there. It's like when I watch Rocky, I relate to Sylvester Stallone. I don't relate to Apollo, because Rocky, his characteristics and it's in his the way he is as a person, that's more how I am. I'm not, Rohit Raju, the wrestler, very braggadocious, very Apollo Creed. Rohit Raju, the person, is not like that. I'm not like that at all. I'm more like a Rocky Balboa, where I want to help people, I'm kind to people, but I'm also driven and I want to do well, and I'm coming from the bottom, because I'm not like everyone's favorite, and I'm not like hyped and my name is praised and put in the spotlight. That's not how it is. So when you do stuff like that, it's organic, it's natural, and it's universal, and then it becomes timeless, because it's something you can watch over and over again and be like, yeah, this could relate to any time period. You can get into this any time period. The newer stuff, because of the writers you have, everything has to be inclusive. You got to check all these boxes. And if that's what you care about more than telling a good Star Wars story, if you care about telling your story, then you already damned the project. You already damned the IP. You already damned whatever you're creating, because you're only touching a very small fan base. And that's a huge, huge mistake. Star Wars is a legacy IP, and it already has a built-in fan base. And like I was saying, it's like for 12-year-old boys back in the day, and it's for those 12-year-old boys have now grown up, and the product kind of grew up a little bit with certain things, and then it didn't. It's okay to have, like, you want, like, more female leads, okay, that's cool, but do it organically. When you do it and you have to just broadcast it and shove it in everybody's face, or you have someone gay in there and you have to broadcast it and shove it in everyone's face, or you have a person of color in there and you have to do the same thing, then you instantly alienate a lot of your audience, because they don't care about any of that. Some people do, and that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of people, they just want to escape from all that, because they see all of that on the news every day with something. You gotta like this, and if you don't like this, you're that. They don't want to do that when they watch Star Wars. They want to escape to a galaxy far, far away, not to a current affairs that's happening on Twitter. That's not what they want to do. But unfortunately, that's the people you have in charge at Lucasfilm. You have these people that have agendas, that want Star Wars to be something different, and they're using it as a vehicle to tell their story instead of telling a good Star Wars story. And you've already lost the battle, because Star Wars is universal. It's for everyone. It's not just for you. The Mandalorian was for everyone. It wasn't just for one thing. And it had representation. It had everything. And they didn't need to shove it down your throat. But you just have these weird people that are so pretentious and so tone deaf that that's all they care about. And if you don't, then you're a bad person. But then they sit there and they will throw sticks and stones and slew words, like insult people and threaten people and do all the stuff that they complain about. And I have no remorse for those people. And I think they're pieces of shit, because they're no worse than the people, they're no better than the people that they complain about. They are the people that they complain about. They just complaining about something different. And they're high and mighty, and they stand on their pedestal, and they're terrible people. And I'm not a fan. I don't like those type of people. I think those are horrible people. Just like I don't like the racists and the sexists. And every time when Finn popped up and they got mad because it was a black stormtrooper, and it was like they made a big deal out of it. That happened. I've seen some channels try to act like that didn't happen. That happened. And it was stupid. And I don't like those people either. I can't stand people like that. Star Wars isn't just for you. It's for everyone. And the original trilogy, and even the sequels or the prequels, to some measure, prove that. But everything new that's been coming out is horrible, and it's done by people that have an agenda to push. All you gotta do is look at the behind-the-scenes stuff. Listen to the way these people talk. Listen to the PR for the Acolyte. That's a prime example. Anytime you're talking to me about having diversity and a female this, female that, or this, that, and the other, instead of telling me about the characters and the story, you're not changing the world. You're not doing anything like that. You're making fantasy, sci-fi stuff. Leave it. Let Star Wars be what it is. Let it be what it was. And you are alienating those fans that were waving that flag for 40 plus years. So you're trying to take an established legacy IP with a built-in fan base, and you're trying to change it into something that it's not. And that's not okay. Create your own thing, just like what's-his-face did, Zack Snyder. Even though it was ass cheeks, Rebel Moon was not good, but he created his own thing. They said, you can't do Star Wars? Fine. He tried to do Star Wars himself. Wasn't good, but at least he created his own thing. Stop taking something and trying to make it your own. Stop changing it. Stop changing it. Stop trying to change it from what it is to make it what you want it to be. That's not going to work. And that's why a lot of people are like, yo, this is ass. What are you doing? Just because you guys don't like the Jedi, so you make them stupid. Just because you don't like Luke Skywalker and Han Solo, so you make them sleazeballs and scumbags. It's stupid. Because those were the things, and that's the merch that sells. Acolyte merchandise ain't selling. Sequel trilogy merchandise isn't selling. It's legacy merchandise and Mandalorian merchandise. That's what sells. Because that's what the majority of your fan base likes. But instead, Lucasfilm is constantly trying to inject modern politics into this legacy IP, and then blaming fans, along with these other weird, like, nerdy-ass YouTubers and shills, and you blame fans instead of taking responsibility and accountability for putting out a bad product, putting out a bad movie, a bad show, a bad story. And then you have these same idiots that want access to all the Star Wars stuff, your Star Wars Explains, your Cal Katarn, or whatever the hell that nerd's name is, all these people that insult fans and then block them on Twitter, and then want to call everybody racist and all this shit. Those same people are a major part of the problem, and they're fake and they're disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And it's like the same thing with like the Geeks and Gamers guys. There's a lot of people over there that they really blur that line of being racist. They toe that line, and they say some messed up stuff. And I used to watch them, and then I was just like, don't like these guys at all. And then there'll be the first people say, well, I'm not racist, but, they might be grifting. But, I don't mess with that. I like Star Wars Theory. I think he gets way too much hate. He just says it like it is. He says some stuff that's like a knucklehead sometimes. But he's pretty genuine. And a lot of these other people just are terrible. But those are the people that continue to cater to Lucasfilm, and Lucasfilm caters to them. And they try to create this thing with the Access Media, and they blame fans instead of taking the blame for putting out some shit stuff. And that's unacceptable. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I really hope that we get an Old Republic, and I really hope we get this, and I really hope we get that. I don't. Because you have the same people that are putting out the nonsense now, that they'll work on that, and they will change it to what they want it to be. They will not respect what it was. They will not respect the source material. They will not respect the legacy. And they will change it and they will make it worse. The only way Star Wars is going to get better is if you fire everyone there. You got to clean house. Kathleen Kennedy might be a great producer, but she is not a great captain of this ship. Michael Jordan was a great basketball player, but he wasn't a great owner. You know what I mean? Just because she produced some great movies doesn't mean she can run a company, and it shows that she can't run a company. She can't. She's too busy trying to push Star Wars and make it into something that it's not. You're alienating the fans that kept that product, that franchise alive. Those are the ones buying all the merch. Those are the ones constantly watching the movies. Those are the ones going back. And you know what? It's mainly guys. And there are a good chunk of women now that like Star Wars, which is cool. But it's mainly those dudes that have been waving that flag for 40 plus years. And you don't want them as fans anymore. Because you want a different fan base that doesn't even show up. They didn't show up to watch The Acolyte. Where were they? They didn't show up. And if they did, they're a very small, loud fan base. Just like the other idiots that are very small, loud fan base. And a lot of people are mad at Star Wars because they love Star Wars. Because they know its potential. They've seen its potential. And what we're getting is low bar stuff. It should be high bar. And it's not. And that's why a lot of people are angry and currently hate current Star Wars. Is because they love it overall and they know what it can be. But instead, you have the same people at Lucasfilm making the same mistakes, putting out the same horrible product, movies, whatever, and they're tone deaf. They're either tone deaf or they just want to watch it burn. And if you're one of those fans that acts like nothing is wrong with Star Wars right now and it's just the fans' fault, you're an idiot. I'm sorry, you're an idiot. You are part of the problem. Because you're allowing slop to be put on everybody's plate, and that's unacceptable. And you are part of the problem. We are not going to get good Star Wars, great Star Wars, until things change in office. Kathleen Kennedy has to go. I hate to say this, Dave Filoni probably has to go. All those people that are like the ultra progressive stuff and want to make it about them, y'all got to go. You got to go because you're putting out horrible Star Wars material. You need people that are fans and that respect the material and don't have a mug that says Luke Skywalker fanboy tears or have a dart board and it's Luke Skywalker's face because he's a straight white male or whatever stupid nonsense that you guys are pulling out of your ass. Like, that stuff it's bad. So the only way Star Wars, in my opinion, is going to get fixed, you got to fire everybody. You got to start fresh. Stop trying to go back to things that were divisive. You're going back to the sequel trilogy. You're trying to push Rey. That was divisive. You're not going to get success out of that because it was divisive. You're going to have people that are going to push back. And they are going to push back because they didn't watch The Acolyte. They are pushing back. They didn't go see Solo. They are pushing back. But Lucasfilm continues to make the same stupid-ass mistakes. So therefore, you got to fire everybody and start fresh. That's the only way things are going to change. And I hope they do change. I do think The Mandalorian and Grogu will be a good movie. Will it be great? Jury's out on that, but I think it'll be good because that was the one thing that brought everybody together. Everything else, I don't have any faith in it because Kathleen Kennedy's still in charge and you have the same people in the writer's room and you have the same nonsense being told in PR interviews and you have the same nonsense being told by Access Media. Nobody gives a shit besides a small group of people about the diversity, this, that, and the other. Is that stuff cool? Yes, but that should not be your focal point. Making good Star Wars should be your focal point, not making what you want. Making good Star Wars should be your focal point. And it hasn't been, and you can tell. You can tell just by the interviews. These people don't care about Star Wars. They want to turn it into what they want to turn it into. And that's sad, and that ain't going to work. Well, I am Rohit Raju. This has been one of my many, many rants. I hope you listened. I'm sure you will either agree or disagree or a little bit of both. But hey, that's okay. That's what makes the world go round besides money and power. You know, we got opinions, we got ideas. And but I would really hope, if you are a fan of current things in Star Wars, I would really hope you can identify the fact that this, legacy IP, this legacy franchise is hurting badly. And it's not because of the fans, it's because of the shit they're putting out. And something has to give. Something big has to change. And it ain't going to happen with a Rey movie. Alright, this is the Mocha Skin Manimal. Thank you for tuning in for Raju's Rants. We'll figure out something else to talk about soon. Until then, take care.